Tonight on the Black Channel. You know, for a group of people that the media would have you believe are no longer consequential, there sure is a whole lot of effort focused on us and what we think. The Black Channel is live. Unapologetic, unadulterated, and absolutely uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, and the everlasting superfortress of intelligent black thought. We are the Black Media, and this is the Black Channel. And I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the voice of Black America, the Black Authority, broadcasting to you live from the only historically black college university of higher education and learning in the cosmos. You are, of course, welcome to join us. And join us you shall, because on tonight's program here, ordinarily we've been warning people here about, this idea of bossing and bullying and, over the course of the last decade, whenever elections come up, we disappear. Whenever elections come up, all of a sudden they tell you that what we think isn't consequential, what we have to say is irrelevant. We don't have to focus on you while we can focus on everyone else. But boy, it has gotten interesting in the last couple of years here. And particularly this year, all of a sudden that little facade is crumbling everywhere you look. And everybody and their mama wants to know what we think. Everybody and their mama wants to know what Black America is thinking. Everybody and their mama wants to know who the historical black presence is thinking. As if everything hinges on us, which means obviously it does. But they want to pick and choose when we focus on that, and we're saying, no, either the spotlight is going to be on us or the spotlight is off of us. And it really is that simple. Either it's on us or it's off of us. So there's this article that was in the Associated Press, or some people call it the Associated Depressed. And lo and behold here, well, this is an article that came out here today, but it really dovetails with a number of other things that they put out and been saying here. I want to show you what the article says. You can go ahead and take a look on your screens and see it along with us here. Black American solidarity with Palestinians is rising and testing longstanding ties to Jewish allies. Well, that headline right there sure does say a lot. That headline sure does say a lot. So why don't we go ahead and check that out from Noreen Nasir and Aaron Morrison. Sydney Wallace, a black Jewish community activist, never felt compelled to travel to Israel, though next year in Jerusalem was a constant refrain at her Chicago synagogue. The 39-year-old said she had plenty to focus on at home, where she frequently gives talks on addressing anti-black sentiment in the American Jewish community and dismantling white supremacy in the U.S. Quote, I know what I'm fighting for here. So very, very interesting. Because here you have this black female who is also Jewish. And she's letting you know that, by the way, when she goes to the synagogue, why her primary concern is not Hamas. She's like, by the way, what about white supremacy? And the whole point, making it very, very clear here that when you sit up here and want to talk about, when you say that Jewish thing as if it's religious, it's like, no, by the way, in its execution, black Jewish is not really a thing. Because you can't be a black Jew if you cannot get Jewish society to honor your Jewishness, which is what I've said before all the time. You cannot be a biracial, I'm black and white, I'm black and Asian, I'm black and whatever, unless you can get the other community to honor your whiteness, your Asianness, your Latinaness. Unless you can get them to honor it, you don't have it. That's the point. Says that all changed when she visited Israel and the West Bank at the invitation of a Palestinian American community organizer from Chicago's South Side, along with 24 other Black Americans and Muslim, Jewish, and Christian faith leaders. The trip, which began September 26, enhanced Wallace's understanding of the struggles of Palestinians living in the West Bank under Israeli military occupation. But, horrifyingly, it was cut short by the unprecedented October 7th attacks on Israel by Hamas militants. So the Associated Press is already using a bunch of invectives to characterize the events. Horrifyingly. In Israel's ensuing bombardment of the Gaza Strip, shocking images of destruction and death seen around the world have mobilized activists in the U.S. and elsewhere. Wallace and a growing number of Black Americans see the Palestinian struggle in the West Bank and Gaza reflected in their own fight for racial equality and civil rights. The recent rise of protest movements against police brutality in the U.S., where structural racism plagues nearly every facet of life, has connected Black and Palestinian activists under a common cause. The recent rise of protest movements. We've been protesting this damn thing. Not for recently. This has been an ongoing thing. But don't expect the Associated Press to articulate that for you. But that kinship sometimes strains the more than century-long alliance between Black and Jewish activists. Here's the question. Has anybody come to us and asked us if there is, in fact, an alliance? Because our immortal elder and ancestor, Dr. John Henry Clark, educated us about this idea of alliances and coalitions. And he taught us that you cannot have a coalition unless the members of the coalition have the power and the ability to punish the members of the coalition who break the coalition. So if you are a member of a coalition, it's not a coalition unless you have the ability to punish members of the coalition who break the coalition. At what point have we had the ability to punish Leor Cohen, Ari Emanuel, or any of these other people who make hella money off of Black folk with their white supremacist ties? At what point have we had the ability to punish these members of the alliance? It's not an alliance when we're sitting along for the ride, or when the members of the alliance sit up here and break bread with our enemies. That's not an alliance. So what I'm saying is the Associated Press, all of this talking here, you're going to tell Black people what we think and tell us what we believe and tell us what the situation is, rather than come to us and ask us what the situation is. This is called propaganda. So that any Black person reading this will just, there's an alliance. And meanwhile, we say, by the way, can you go out there and go find it? So this is dead, dirty propaganda, and the problem that they're having is it's not working, it's not sticking anymore. From Black American groups that denounced the U.S. backing of Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory, to Black protesters demonstrating for the Palestinians' right to self-determination, some Jewish Americans are concerned that support could escalate the threat of anti-Semitism and weaken Jewish-black ties fortified during the civil rights movement. So black people, that if we're not supporting you, that alone will escalate the threat of anti-Semitism, without explaining for 1 second how. Where's the connection between the two? Well, it sounds like you're either with us or against us. That's what that sounds like. And that is not asking us what we believe or asking us what our position is. That's telling us what it should be. That's not a dialogue. That's a dictatorship. And this idea that anybody, a political party, a religious movement, a social movement, an ethnic group, that anybody's going to just march in and talk to us in a way that we don't get to talk to them. We don't get to tell white Jewish people that, Ari, you breaking bread with Dana White and all these suspected white supremacists out there. That's not a good look for you. We don't get a say there. While we get steamrolled, we don't get a say. Just thought I would point that out. That's been going on for decades. We've never been invited to the table so that we can have a say. And then when we do articulate what the issue is, we either get shut up from the beginning or get told to shut up later. But we don't get to sit there and say, hey, this ain't gonna work. Quote, we are concerned as a community about what we feel is a lack of understanding of what Israel is about and how deeply October 7th has affected us, said Bob Kaplan, executive director of the Center for Shared Society at the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York. I find that very interesting because, you see, when our brother Nick Cannon simply had a conversation with somebody that influential Jewish people didn't like, all of a sudden here they come for your neck. All of a sudden here they come for the money. All of a sudden here they come to shut you down. Nobody was talking about, there's a lack of understanding about what Black America is about and how deeply the last 400 years have affected us right up until today. Nobody says that. And we been in the streets the whole time. Kyrie Irving, we get told to sit down, shut up, or we'll take things from you. Nobody sits down and says, by the way, black people are deeply concerned as a community about what we feel is a lack of understanding. That doesn't come up. So I just find it interesting. There's a whole different dialogue when they're talking about us. Quote, anti-Semitism has to be seen as a reprehensible form of hate, as any form of hate is, he said. Anti-Semitism is as real to the American Jewish community and causes as much trauma and fear and upset to the American Jewish community as racism causes to the black community, or anti-Asian feeling causes to the Asian community, or anti-Muslim feeling causes in the Muslim community. Sir, that is untrue. Sir, that is completely false. Completely, totally false. As a Jewish person, if you are white, you can walk into any courtroom and your whiteness is honored. You have a corporate apparatus, you have a media apparatus, you have a higher education apparatus, you have a social apparatus, you have a political apparatus, and you have an international support apparatus that honors your whiteness. I did not say Jewishness, but honors your whiteness. So no matter what ethnicity you belong to within the white race, as long as you're not stepping on the toes of whiteness or turning against it, they honor your whiteness. You have never walked into a court of law as a Jewish person, and you got sent to prison wrongly for the rest of your life and never came into contact with a white or Jewish person. Black folk experience that literally every day. As a black person in America, you literally can walk into a courtroom from the time that you are arrested to the time that you are sent to prison. You can go through that entire judicial process and never encounter another black person except the ones in the holding cell if you have to stay there in between trial dates. But as far as the court system is concerned, the folks who actually make decisions about you, you can go through that entire process, and black people routinely do, and never encounter a non-white person from the day you're arrested to the day you're incarcerated. Now, that's not the Jewish experience. Ever. Ever. That is not the Jewish experience at all. So when you sit here and say it is as real and causes as much trauma and fear, stop and frisk was not targeting Jewish people. I was in New York during those times. We'll come back to that later, I suppose. But my folks in New York, you all know full well, in the Hasidic communities, they got Hasidic police officers. I'm not telling you what somebody told me. I'm telling you what I've seen. Hell, I've shown you all video here on the Black channel. They got their beards. They got their yarmulkes. Those are the police officers they got in those neighborhoods. While they tell black folk what kind of hair you can't have. By the way, in the Hasidic neighborhoods, they got Hasidic Jews on the police force. Stop and frisk doesn't exist for them. Never did. Stop and frisk doesn't exist. So how are you going to sit here and say it causes as much trauma and fear? No, sir. No, it doesn't. No. There's nobody who is targeted like us. Everybody else that you named on that list, Jewish people, Asian people, Muslim people, they're all getting protection. They're all getting a focus. President coming down. We need anti-hate legislation for them. Black folk still waiting on something for you. Still waiting on something for you. But he added, many Jews in the U.S. understand that black Americans can have an affinity for the Palestinian cause that doesn't conflict with their regard for Israel. Well, of course, can't two things be true at the same time? How many times are we told this when folks are out here explaining to us, well, by the way, can't two things be true at the same time? Can't they be? Just because we have an opinion on one thing doesn't mean that we're subjugating somebody else here. Why? Both sides of the fence. Everybody else is allowed to do that. Black people are told, no, you got to be on one side. According to a poll earlier this month from the Associated Press Newark Center for Public Affairs Research, black adults were more likely than white and Hispanic adults to say the U.S. is too supportive of Israel. 44% compared to 30% and 28% respectively. However, black Americans weren't any more likely than others to say the U.S. is not supportive enough of the Palestinians. So they're keeping track and tabs on us. By the way, is anybody asking if the U.S. is not supportive enough of black people, by the way? Generational divides also emerged, here we go, with younger Americans more likely to say the U.S. is too supportive of Israel, according to the poll. Younger Americans, didn't say black, and yet the focus is on us. Now you can see where this is reflected across the board outside of black society, but the focus suddenly comes on us. And there's a reason for that, because we are the influential culture in America. We are the tastemakers in America. And they have always known that when we settle down on something, we find a way we can popularize anything. We make everything hot. So yeah, if you can get black folk on board, they have a superior communication apparatus and style. If you can get them where they're supposed to be. If you can get them where they're supposed to be. Which is why all the focus is on getting us to kowtow and bow down and support these different interests, but never about what's going to be done for us. It's all about harnessing our energy and support with no benefit. Because once you get the benefits, then you have self-direction. Now we're saying, you know what? We're going to start with the self-direction first, no matter who doesn't like it. We're doing us because you all have been doing you. Now, listen to this next part. Black American support for the Palestinian cause dates back to the civil rights movement through prominent so-called left-wing voices, including Malcolm X. Malcolm X was not a left-wing voice, you lying pieces of crap. Malcolm X was not a left-wing voice. Malcolm X was a black-wing voice. So was Stokely Carmichael. And I'll throw Angela Davis in there, though you know how I feel about that. So this is the reason right here that you all can't talk to us. Because when you sit up here and come up with lies and distortions like this is why we don't talk to you. This is why you have no influence with us, because you're telling outright lies. Malcolm X, you're not going to rewrite Malcolm X into some left-wing activist or Stokely Carmichael into a left wing. Malcolm X spoke out against left wing and right wing while he was alive. He spoke out against the so-called right wing and against the so-called left wing. He was black wing. Malcolm X said we don't support Democrats or Republicans. So-called liberals, he gave many speeches about John F. Kennedy and the, quote, so-called liberals. This was Malcolm X while he was alive, talking about the so-called liberals. And if I didn't remind you all tonight of the speeches of Malcolm X going in on John F. Kennedy and President Kennedy and the so-called liberals, and yet here you are all these decades later with outright lies being told by the Associated Press trying to call Malcolm X a left-winger when he literally has speeches where he was ripping the so-called liberals apart. And not just one speech. That was a constant, persistent thing Malcolm was doing to make his position known. So if we don't sit up here and tell the truth and shoot this down, then they can put this lie out here, and the next thing they try to test these lies out to see if these lies can float. Let's go ahead and say that and test it out and see if anybody's paying attention. Well, you messed around wrong because we're paying attention. You are not going to come here and rewrite our history and our icons into something you want to use. They were Malcolm X, neither Malcolm X nor Stokely Carmichael were left wing. They were black wing. They go on to say more recent rounds of violence, including the 2021 Israel-Hamas war, we'll come back to that, and now Israel's unprecedented bombing campaign against Gaza, shown live on social media, have deepened ties between the two movements. Quote, this is just the latest generation to pick up the mantle, the latest black folks to organize, build, and talk about freedom and justice, said Ahmad Abzaneid, the director of the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights. During a week-long truce between Israel and Hamas as part of the recent deal to free dozens of hostages seized by Hamas militants, Israel released hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Many were teenagers who had recently been picked up in the West Bank for minor offenses like stone throwing and had not been charged. Some black Americans who watched the Palestinian prisoner release and learned about Israel's administrative detention policy, where detainees are held without trial, drew comparisons to the U.S. prison system. Oh, when you start telling the truth about this stuff and when you start going into details, like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, there's a bit of an explanation going on there. Couldn't help but notice, how do we support somebody who's doing the exact same behavior we see over here? Might be time to address that, you think? No? Okay. Do you? While more than 2/3 of jail detainees in the U.S. have not been convicted of a crime, black people are jailed at more than 4 times the rate of white people, often for low-level offenses, according to the studies of the American judicial system. If you're a white person in America, you can commit murder, and it takes black people demonstrating in the streets to get the police departments to arrest you. Not just 1 or 2 times. You see that all the time. And most of the time, we can't even get the folks arrested. That's a radical difference between what you see anywhere else. Quote, Americans like to talk about innocent until proven guilty, but black folks are predominantly and disproportionately detained in the United States, regardless of whether anything has been proven. And that's very similar to Israel's administrative detention, said Julian Rose, an organizer with a black-run bail fund in Atlanta. Black folk have done so wrong by the system, we got to have a black bail fund. A white woman, all she got to do is point the finger, and that's it. Hell, a lot of the time, they don't even need to point a finger. A lot of the time, you don't even have to point a finger. Not even necessary. Stop and frisk didn't require a finger being pointed. The police already know where all the bad dudes are. They already know. They haven't picked him up because that's the point. Rami Nashashibi, executive director of the Inner City Muslim Action Network, invited Wallace and the others to take part in a trip called Black Jerusalem, an exploration of the sacred city through an African and Black American lens. The sacred city. Glad to hear that. They met members of Jerusalem's small Afro-Palestinian community, Palestinians of Black American heritage, many of whom can trace their lineage in the old city back centuries. Centuries? Now, did you hear that? Centuries. Well, that's not the claim of the Black Hebrews. That's not the claim of Black Middle Easterners. It's not the claim that we go back centuries. The claim is going back millennia, not centuries. So once again, this article is going hard to work to make it clear, well, if you're black, there's a distinction. More lies. Quote, our black brothers and sisters in the U.S. suffered from slavery, and now they suffer from racism, said Musa Kos, executive director of the African Communities Society Jerusalem, whose father immigrated to Jerusalem from Chad in 1941 and whose mother is Palestinian. Quote, we suffer from the Israeli occupation and racist policies. The Americans and the Israelis are conducting the same policies against us and the Black Americans, so we should support each other, Kos said. Nashashibi agreed, saying, quote, my Palestinian identity was very much shaped and influenced by Black American history. I always hoped that a trip like this would open up new pathways that would connect the dots, not just in a political and ideological way, he said, but between the liberation and struggles for humanity that are very familiar to us in the U.S. During the trip, Wallace was dismayed by her own ignorance of the reality of Palestinians living under Israeli occupation. At an Israeli checkpoint outside the Western Wall, the Jewish holy site, Wallace said her group was asked who was Jewish, Muslim, or Christian. Wallace and the others showed IDs issued for the trip, but when an Israeli officer saw her necklace depicting her name in Hebrew, she was waved through, while Palestinians and Muslims in the group were subjected to intense scrutiny and bag checks. Quote, being there made me wonder if this is what it's like, if it was like to live in the Jim Crow era in America, Wallace said. Camille Osigura, who grew up in an African-American Muslim community in Brooklyn, New York, also said the trip opened her eyes. At the entrance of the Ida refugee camp near Bethlehem in West Bank, Osigura noticed a massive key, a Palestinian symbol of the homes lost in the 1948 creation of Israel. referred to as Nakba or catastrophe. Many kept keys to the homes they fled or were forced out of, a symbol signifying the Palestinian right to return, which Israel has denied. Oseguera said the key recalled her visit to the Door of No Return memorial in Senegal, dedicated to the enslaved Africans forced on the slave ships and brought to the Americas. As a descendant of enslaved Africans, it brought thoughts of, quote, what the dream of my return would have meant for my ancestors. Returning to home, she said, is a longing that is transmitted through generations. Israel's law of return grants all Jews the right to settle permanently in Israel and acquire Israeli citizenship, a concept that drew support from many Black American civil rights leaders. Well, isn't this interesting? So the Associated Press, and by the way, ever since Professor Black Truth started going over the names of the Black folk, the Black people who supported Israel, when sycophantic liars like Juliana Margulies and Michael Rappaport and others have tried to distort the record. By the way, all of a sudden, here it is with your white corporate media. Now, all of a sudden, they're saying it's something they weren't saying a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago. All of a sudden, now here they are. Now, all of a sudden, here they are running down the names, including A. Philip Randolph, Bayard Rustin, Dorothy Height, Shirley Chisholm, Martin Luther King Jr. Oh, Martin Luther King Sr., the father of the slain civil rights leader. Over the last decade, however, Black Americans and the Palestinians have also found growing solidarity. In 2020, the murder of George Floyd by a white police officer resonated in the West Bank. You take a look at the pictures here. These are pictures from the West Bank, where Palestinians drew comparisons to their own experiences of brutality under occupation, and a massive mural of Floyd appeared on Israel's hulking separation barrier. Need I remind you all? Here's just one example right here from Instagram, but there were a number of others. And we remember at the time, this resonated around the world, except in certain places. And they made their voices heard then. That they, even though they were on the other side of the world, they couldn't get here, but they were letting you know we support the Black Intifada. Now, do you see that language? Because if you'll all recall, I called it from the very beginning. It's not no George Floyd riots. It's the uprising. You are being targeted for murder and death and oppression, and you're being told the only thing you can do is sit there and wait and hope you don't get killed. And if you do, oh well, too sucks to be you. Oh no, there is no law made by man that says you have an obligation to die. There is no law that a man can make that says that you're obligated to let yourself die. None. So when they talked about George Floyd and the riots, I was there very quick to correct that. It's not a riot, it's an uprising. And you're seeing uprisings in various other places. That's what that is. And that's what resonated, because the rest of the world knows how to do it now, because they've been watching us persistently do it now for over a century. And we taught them how to do it. Which is why when we get lit up and stand up, everybody else starts standing up too. And the Palestinians made their voices heard, and they understood what they were seeing. And they said, hey, these are not riots or protests. This is an intifada. We recognize that. That the goal isn't to put one cop in jail. The goal is to change the system. Well, this is an intifada. Okay, we get that. We get that. We can dig it. We can dig it. And they've been digging it ever since. And that's always been the point. In 2014, protests in Ferguson, Missouri erupted after the police killing of Michael Brown, a black teenager, which gave rise to the nascent Black Lives Matter movement. Notice they didn't call that murder or any of those other energetic terms that they were using before. But I digress. Actually, I don't, but okay. While police officers in Ferguson fired tear gas at protesters, Palestinians in the occupied West Bank tweeted advice about how to manage the effects of the irritants. No word yet on whether or not the Israeli police force or military was giving us any hints of what to do. Oh, I'm sorry. They were too busy training the police officers in America on the tactics to use against us. My bad. My mistake. The Israeli government and the Israeli military, they didn't have time to tell us how to deal with police brutality. They were too busy training the police here to execute those tactics and methods. So, they were occupied. Pardon the expression. They were busy. They didn't have time to help us. They were too busy They didn't have time to advise us. They were too busy advising the police. Got it. In 2016, by the way, Juliana Margulie, where you at for that, heifer? Michael Rappaport, Donnie Deutsch, or anybody else. By the way, where the hell are y'all at to talk about that? By the way. In 2016, when BLM activists formed the coalition known as the Movement for Black Lives, they included support for Palestinians in a platform called the Vision of Black Lives. A handful of Jewish groups, which had largely been supportive of the BLM movement, denounced the black activists' characterization of Israel as a purportedly apartheid state that engages in discrimination against the Palestinian people. Okay, what is the definition of an apartheid state? Quote, there tends to be this doubt or astonishment that black people care about other oppressed people around the world, said Phil Agnew, co-director of the national advocacy group Black Men Build, who has taken 4 trips to the West Bank since 2014. It would be a mistake, Agnew said, to ignore significant numbers of black and Jewish Americans who are united in their support of the Palestinians. None of the members of the Black Jerusalem trip anticipated it would come to a tragic end with the October 7th Hamas attacks, in which some 1,200 people were killed in Israel and about 240 taken hostage. Since then, more than 18,700 Palestinians have been killed in Israel's blistering air and ground campaign in Gaza, now in its 3rd month. Violence in the West Bank has also surged. Folks, 1,200, 18,000. There's no way in the world you're going to convince anybody that you killed 18,000 quote, militants, 18,000 members of Hamas. There's no way on this side of Southwest hell you're going to convince anybody that this was targeted and you were just getting, quote unquote, the bad guys. 18,000. This isn't about Israel or Palestine anymore. This is about, by the way, this is just math now. Now we're just talking about mathematics. Back home in Chicago, Wallace is now, by the way, did you see they saved this until the very end? They saved this part right here until the very end of their article. Back home in Chicago, Wallace has navigated speaking about her support for Palestinians while maintaining her Jewish identity and standing against anti-Semitism. She says she doesn't see those things as mutually exclusive. Quote, I'm trying not to do anything that alienates anyone, she said, but I can't just not do the right thing because I'm scared. AP writer Isabel Debray in Jerusalem contributed. Nasir and Morrison are members of AP's race and ethnicity team. You can follow Nasir here. You can follow Morrison there. And I just thought there might be a reason there. I just thought there might be a reason. And I wonder if folks take notice of that kind of thing. I wonder if they take notice of that kind of thing, because that is important. Right now, you have an incredible amount of pressure coming down to try to tell us what to think and how to think. And they are focusing specifically on us. They're focusing on us. What they're not doing is coming and talking to us and accepting what we're saying. Everything is about trying to influence us. And that's what everything becomes about. What they're upset over is that we're no longer allowing politicians, pulpit preachers, or special interest groups to speak for us. Now you can no longer ignore it because they're not speaking on our behalf. We're speaking on our own. We're speaking for ourselves. And what they're saying is that we don't like those independent answers that you're coming up with. We don't like those. Can you change that? Can you shift that? Can you alter that? Because we don't like those answers. And yet nobody else has to shift or alter what they're doing. They're doing them, we're doing us. Well, I thought I would take it upon myself. to go a little bit deeper into this. Because, if folks are going to sit up here and try to bully our opinion and say that black folk need to fall in line with what these other folk are thinking here, I was just wondering to myself, is that the whole story? Because I don't think it is. I don't think that's actually the whole story. I think there's another dimension to this that the white corporate media doesn't go into while they're attempting to propagandize us. So I've decided to take it upon myself to dig a little bit deeper into it, and I think we're going to find some interesting things here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all the other side of the story here. In just a few moments, I'm going to give you the other side of the story, and we'll see if folks still feel the same way after that. We'll see if they feel the same way after that. We're going to take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break before we do. I want to thank everyone who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat, Venmo. Big shout out here to my man, Mr. Richburg. Thank you very much for your support, brother. We appreciate that as always. To Sarah and everyone else. We're going to take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. When we come back, the other side of this story about who should be supporting Israel and why are you silent and more. This is The Black Channel.
Hello, my name is Steve Burgess, and I'm the author of this book, Guidelines for the Successful Student, a closer look at parenting your school-aged child. In this book, I've explained the role of the parent and the student in addition to what accommodations, procedures, rewards and consequences and expectations that need to be in place to ensure student success from primary to high school. This book is available on Amazon.com. For more information, please visit my link tree at Easy One-on-One, and to access my latest podcast, A Teaching Moment with Mr. B. Thank you all for listening.
A white supremacist assassin seeks revenge. Corrupt FBI agents with evil intentions. Dangerous black collaborators dedicated to treason. Occam Jeffers must defeat them all and somehow survive. One misstep and he's a dead man. Join Occam Jeffers as he looks the devil in his blue eyes and tells him, "Black first." A sequel to the underground hit War of the Heart, Spirit of 1811 Publishing presents God Love Us, on sale at Amazon. Pre-order and save today. Visit spiritofo1811publishing.com and show your love.
Order yours today to experience all the benefits of Ash Kickin' natural body butter. With skin so smooth and soft, you'll thank us for it. Shop Ash Kickin' online. That's ASHKICKEN KIN.com.
Hi, this is Brenda Starr, creator of Poetry with a Purpose and author of the book Pressed But Not Crushed. Pressed But Not Crushed is an anthology of political poems that address current and historical issues in American descendants of slave population and African American population. The book describes slavery and its residuals, Jim Crow segregation, social depredation, and other relevant issues to American descendants of slaves and African Americans, including the current political climate that does not address our issues.
This is the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. Very glad to be with you all here this evening. And now I want to go ahead and take a look at the other side of the story here, because there's a whole lot of effort being concentrated towards targeting us and influencing us and, quite frankly, bullying us into doing certain things. And if you all agree that that's what they've been doing, I want you to give me the black fist emoji in the chat room and hit the likes button for me. It's almost 5,000 people in here live right now. And I want to use tonight's program as an opportunity to address that. So if you agree that folks have been trying to bully us, give me the black fist emoji in the chat room and hit the likes button for me. Now, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and focus on the other side of the story here. And by the other side of the story, I mean this. I just couldn't help but notice, you know, with all this attention that's been focused specifically on us and to influence us and to, quite frankly, bully us. And I'm like, by the way, do y'all have this kind of smoke for anyone else where you're just making it this constant campaign where you're getting up every day and saying, you know what, by the way, what are the black folks doing today? We need to know what they're doing and they need to get together, and you're so disappointed in them. I don't hear anybody talking about how disappointed they are in the vice president and her community. This here from ASAMnews.com. Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders march for Palestine in D.C. by Jessica Zhao. You see the videos. You see the posts. You see the tweets. You see the pictures. You take a look at this. I mean, man, they're trying to connect themselves and the Palestinians to their issues in China. You even got the feminists out there. Okay, that's going to be trouble down the line for y'all. I mean, but seriously, just wondering, by the way, couldn't help but notice, you know, these other folks, you're not trying to tell them what to do. You're not getting on TV wagging your finger at them, Filipinos for Palestine. You're not jumping up trying to wag your finger at them and tell them that they are some special case and that they supposed to fall in line. But you're not doing that with them. I just couldn't help but notice why you don't seem to be very concerned about them. I thought they were the fastest growing group. I thought all eyes on them. I thought that was the case. Okay, well, you know what? Yeah, I agree with you now. All eyes on them. Yep, all eyes over there. And yet, that's not happening. You're not doing the same thing with Latinos either. It's always focusing on us. So I just thought I would take a moment to show you all that, by the way, ain't nobody talking to the Asians. No one's saying anything to them. And you know who else? Juliana Margulies and Michael Rappaport and the rest of these folks out there, you know who else they aren't saying anything to? Let me go ahead and show you all something. They're not saying anything to, oh my, well, isn't this a little awkward? Yeah, this is a little bit awkward. Now, as you all know, Goldman Sachs has had no problem doing business in the Middle East, across the board, anywhere and everywhere, funding, giving investment into governments that are 100,000% supporters of Palestine, but more importantly, are critics of the Jewish state's very existence. And Goldman Sachs, this is just one story. We could be sitting here Googling deals between Goldman Sachs and the Middle East all damn day. Not just one or two. We would be sitting here Googling them all day. They have never had a problem doing that. And Juliana Margulies and her friends have never breathed a word about this and ain't saying nothing now. While you talking about us and all we can give the Palestinians is attaboy. Meanwhile, over there at Goldman Sachs, they are stacking up not millions, but billions. And you all over there don't have a word to say about that. Not a word. Nothing at all. Did you all notice that? By the way, I just thought I would take a few moments here to go ahead and remind people that while they're sitting up here trying to act as if, this is a different issue or something, while they've been trying to do that, I just thought that was interesting. And by the way, if you had a problem with that, if you really had a problem with that, then I just wonder if you really have a problem with that, why is it ain't nobody else heard nothing? Why is that? I'm just asking, because if you are that concerned about it, and if you're that worried about it, and if that really bothers you that much, then I would be thinking that, black folk are small damn potatoes over here. Why is it that you haven't had a word to say about folks who are sending straight cash money to the Middle East? She isn't talking to the Jewish businessmen at Goldman Sachs. They're not taking them to task and saying, by the way, forget them black folk, ain't you one of us? While you're sitting up here trying to bully people and talking about a black Jewish alliance, by the way, what about the Jewish alliance? Not a word for them. Nothing to say about this. This is cool. We can live with this. This is all right. Boy, we ain't got to worry about Goldman Sachs. We really got to get in line to these Negroes over here. Really got to get them in line. If somebody can get Juliana Margulies' number, get her tweet or whatever, just, by the way, just wonder if we can get a word from her about, after all, why is your focus on us here? Were you not aware that this was going on? And this is just one among many, by the way. This is just one among many. One among many. Because when you talk about states in the Middle East, that support the Palestinians and not Dubai. I just thought I would point that out to you there. I just thought I would point that out to you. For example, the UFC. Hello, Mr. Ari Emanuel. The UFC has no problem whatsoever. No problem whatsoever. None. With Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, the Saudis, the UFC doesn't have a problem with that at all. So, nobody, you don't have anything to say. You want to talk about folks not supporting Israel? You want to talk about that? You want to talk about folks not supporting Israel? You want to speak about that? And the only folks you stomping at and barking at are black folk. But this isn't an issue. This doesn't bother you and this doesn't worry you. This is no issue. Let Goldman Sachs back up the damn Brinks truck with the money to drop off in the Middle East. But black folk better not so much as make a tweet. You better not so much as make a tweet. Otherwise, we're very worried and very scared for what you're doing. Meanwhile, Goldman Sachs and billions, they ain't bothered about that. Okay, y'all need to pick a rationale and pick a side. So which is it? Are you very worried and very concerned, or is it no big deal? Is it all right? Because it seems to me like this is a waste of time. Seems to me like this is a waste of time right here. I would be worried about the guys, not the fellas sending tweets. I'd be worried about the fellas sending billions. I'd be more concerned about them. By the way, let me know if Michael Rappaport's ever gonna say anything. Better yet, don't. He doesn't move the needle one way or the other. But by the way, I just thought I would take a moment here to point it out and say, couldn't help but notice that that's going on. You see, it's become the in thing to do to try to bully us about our opinion because we are the influencers of the culture. But more importantly, as I have told you all now for a decade and a half, we are the only legitimate claim of injustice. We're the only ones. Everybody else were aggressors. We are the only pure victims anywhere. Furthermore, we're the only pure victims today. We don't have a nation state that is targeting anybody. We don't have a social or economic apparatus that is targeting anybody. And if we did, we don't have the resources to target anyone. We are the only pure victims that there are. That's why everyone, in order to try to legitimize their non-existent claims of victimhood, try to hitch their wagons to us and find some similarity to us. And, well, hey, we're a lot like them. Actually, no, you're not. Back up off me. No, you're not. No, you're not. You are individuals jockeying against other individuals for power, wealth, and influence. We're trying to get ours. We're the only ones with a legitimate claim. The only ones. That's it. There's nobody who has lost their land. There is no one who has been systemically prosecuted, targeted for oppression by us. You can't name it anywhere. The best they can do is tell you, well, Kanye West says something in a song. If you don't sit the hell down, if that's the best you got, then you don't have anything. And you already know that. There's not a judge anywhere in America that has given a black person the kind of treatment that Kyle Rittenhouse got and is still on the damn bench. Mike Nifong did something to 3 white men that they simply disagreed with in the court system, and that was the end of him as a prosecutor and didn't require that was the end of him as a prosecutor in his law license, and nobody had to march or protest for it. The system started digging into him and investigating him on its own, and then did something that they claim to you can't be done. When we show up, oh, you can't remove a prosecutor, you can't get them prosecuted, you can't take away their license, you can't remove them from office. Mike Nifong, it happened to him so damn fast his eyeballs spun. While they literally tell us what can't be done. Then they turn right around and do it to him. Then they tell us, oh, that was just a fluke. Can't do that again. Nobody's demanding that on our behalf because you would literally have to close down every courthouse in America and a bunch of them outside of it. Nobody ever brings that up. We are the only people with that kind of claim. The only ones. Nobody's got that. We are the only people who can say that. And the only time that you see these white supremacists and suspected white supremacists actually encountering justice is when all eyes are on them now, but that's only in the wake of the uprisings after the murder of George Floyd. It doesn't take that to happen for white folk. If a white woman sits up here and tells you, well, Bill Cosby can pinch me on the rump, if he give me a few $1 million, I'll let that go. And then she can come back 40 years later and say, hey, he didn't break me off enough bread. Can we put him back in jail? Why, sure, we can do that. And then it gets done. Then it gets done. And then it gets done. We don't have anything like that. We've never seen it. Never saw it. While they're telling you what you need to do. While they're wagging their fingers at us. And I'm like, by the way, you got bigger issues and other folk you need to be talking to. So the next time that somebody tries to jump in you all's faces, or somebody tries to say something, you remind them that don't even get into a conversation about what black folk are or aren't doing. Tell them, you know what? I support your right to criticize everyone. Now, you need to get over here with Goldman Sachs and over here with the Asian Americans. You need to get over there. If you have something critical to say, you got something negative to say, by the way, we couldn't help but notice the deafening silence over there. You don't seem to be worried about them at all. And yet got plenty to say to the most powerless people in the room, without any regard for exactly why it is they are the most powerless people in the room. You come out here online, never mind individuals like Ed Blum, who we have been talking about literally for years, and he's formed his minority coalition. So let me get this straight. Ed Blum, Jewish, has formed his minority coalition with Asians to target black people, and ain't nobody, Juliana Margulies and friends are saying nothing. Not a word. By the way, hey, she can jump in there anytime and speak up. Anytime she wants to hop in there and talk about that, she can. Nothing so far. Yeah, we're sitting over here saying, by the way, we couldn't notice this deafening silence. See, let me explain something to you. It's not an alliance if the only time somebody shows up is when it's an election season. You need to be showing up, and we need to be hearing and seeing this when neighborhoods are being gentrified. Oh, hell. When Ed Blum is going to the damn Supreme Court, he never should have been able to get out of the school board meeting, much less all the way to the Supreme Court. Never should have made it that far. Because if it was black folk targeting Jewish students at schools, that case wouldn't have made it anywhere. And we don't have a Jewish media or a Jewish voice talking about, you know what, we need to speak about this Ed Blum character. He is messing with the alliance. You don't hear anybody saying, hey, We got to pull Ed Blum down over here in Jewish circles. He's messing up the Black-Jewish alliance. We need to shut that down. He's messing up the Black-Jewish alliance. Nobody has said that in all these years. They just let him march to the Supreme Court. Now we just like, well, you know what? If we're on our own, let it be what it's going to be. Let it be what it's going to be. And that list of names, I would just be here all year. I'm not going to just go down the whole list of them. You all get the idea. But don't come talking to me about some alliance when it's an election year. When you need something. When there's something on the table for you. That's why they can't name anything recent. Well, you know, we were out there for George Floyd. Here's the problem. You were not what you're asking for now is not a protest. You are asking for dollars. You are asking to prosecute people. You are asking to maintain a physical status quo. You're demanding things to get done, not to just one individual, but systemically, from top to bottom. That's what y'all are over there talking about. We've been talking about systemic change too. All of a sudden, everybody gets quiet. You see, here's the other thing right here. It ain't enough for you to sit up here and throw up a Instagram post one time and then you go march home, because you see the complaint you all got now is that, well, black folk is set up here and maybe we put up a tweet and then we went home. And you're saying, well, that's not enough. It's been months later. We need y'all to get on deck and stay on deck. Well, therein lies the problem that we've had. Our issue isn't going to be resolved in a tweet or a 30-minute episode of The Jeffersons. When you gonna get on deck, you got to stay on deck. And we've had folks who are on deck if it's an election year. And then they're very limited in what it is they're going to do. And they show up for a photo op. But then when it's time to look around and say, okay, we got to push these folks through jail, ain't nobody there. Nobody's present. I made a tweet for George Floyd. Baby, our issue is bigger than George Floyd, been bigger than that. And who is staying on deck to see all these folks get run through? I threw up a tweet after George Floyd, man, if you don't quit. And then every other day we're looking up. Every other day we're looking up, and the so-called black and non-black coalition, the Black-Jewish coalition, all of a sudden is supporting the white supremacists that we've been fighting against. Next thing you know, they over there with them. That's the issue that we've been having. That's why I'm naming names tonight. I'm naming names. I'm naming institutions. I'm pointing to people. I'm showing you what it is. Ain't nobody saying nothing for us. But they sure do want to have a whole lot to say about what we think. There's the issue we're having. You got a whole lot to say about what we think. Well, yeah, it's not an election year, at least not nationally. 2024 it will be. Okay, well, look here. You had years now to go ahead and beat this drum and stomp on that. We didn't ask for no damn sympathy for George Floyd. We asked for heads to roll and things to change systemically. We demanded heads to roll and things to change systemically. We didn't ask for just one cop to get arrested. We said there must be systemic change across the board. That's sure what the state of Israel is. The state of Israel is the very definition of systemic change across the board. Hey, Palestinians, you used to have a whole country. Now you got half of one. How long is that going to take? Oh, we're doing it today. Wow, that's a radical change. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we're going to take that West Bank here in a little bit. West Bank, Golan Heights. Man, we're taking it all here. Piece by piece. Well, how long is that going to take? Oh, we're doing it today. Black folks sitting over here like, you know what? Wow, we could appreciate some of that action. We could appreciate some of that action. That'd be kind of nice if we could get a little bit of that. Now that we know it's something you can actually do. Yeah, we'd like to get a little bit of that. Although we've been saying since the beginning. By the way, you can do some of that. Really? Oh, okay, well, let us think it over. Okay, well, why don't we just sit back here and do us while you sitting over there thinking? Oh, we need you to jump up here right quick. I don't know we can, man. You busy thinking. So I wouldn't want to disturb you thinking. You're doing important things like thinking. Or trying to figure out how to circumvent this. So we just said, yeah, let's go ahead and just let you do what you're going to do. But we're not going to chase you around for it. We're not going to chase you around for it. I'll put up these posts here. A little over a week ago on Twitter to remind you all of a few things here. Speaking about PBS, just thought I would go ahead and take a moment here to remind you. College leaders face congressional hearing over anti-Semitism and Islamophobia on campus. College leaders face congressional hearing. That didn't take no damn 15 damn years. That's my point. It didn't take a damn century. And the only folks they went after were the ones who offended Jewish people. I'm not speaking here nor there over that. I'm just saying, by the way, black folk have been facing systemic racism forever. We can't get a damn school board meeting. You all can get Congress to stop what it's doing. Nobody had to have a plebiscite. Nobody had to have a commission. Nobody was telling them, ooh, we too busy to get that. They jumped on that for Jewish people quick, fast, and in a hurry. I'm like, okay, well, then heads started rolling. Not only did they hold the hearings, but immediately after the hearings, heads started rolling. Did you all get that? Not only was there a hearing, but right after the hearings came immediately, didn't take a new president, didn't take a new administration, didn't take campaign in the streets. The hearings came immediately. And then they started getting rid of heads of colleges immediately. Oh, you out of here. That's it. You gone. Black folks still like, wow, so that can happen. It just can't happen for us. But it can happen. Ed Blum can get black folk kicked out the schools. If you're a black administrator, you can get gone. God help you if you're a black football coach. Now, these other folks right here, we say something, okay, we need a few years. Things move slowly. You can't just have a congressional hearing in a day. Actually, you can. Everything they tell us is a lie whenever they show up to us. Oh, there ain't no money. Plenty with COVID, plenty for Ukraine, plenty for Afghanistan. Oh, it takes time to put this together. Boy, they can get a hearing for everybody else scheduled. We can pencil y'all in for this Tuesday. It's Sunday. Yeah, we can get you penciled in for Tuesday. They tell us it'll take 2 years. They tell everybody else it'll take 2 days. And then right after the hearing, well, we've heard enough. Go ahead and can them. Get rid of these folks over here. We'll go ahead and do that. We can get to it. Sure can. That's not enough for you here. Your tax dollars at work. I posted this one here before also. The State Department approves the sale of tank ammunition to Israel in a deal that bypasses Congress. This is why you need us as your media source, because, by the way, the key words here, this might just seem like another story that's just a throwaway story and just ignore it or whatever. State Department approves the sale of tank ammunition to Israel. Snooze. By the way, in a deal that bypasses Congress. Let me go ahead and go through that with you here right quick. Going around Congress, the Biden administration said Saturday it has approved the emergency sale to Israel of nearly 14,000 100,000 rounds of tank ammunition, your tax dollars at work, worth more than $106 million as Israel intensifies its military operations in the southern Gaza Strip. The move comes as President Joe Biden's request for nearly $106 billion aid package. So he sold them $106 million worth, and he's asking for $106 billion worth. Okay. It's like, yeah, can I get a little bit more than that? Can I get a little bit more than that? For Ukraine, Israel, and other national security is languishing in Congress, caught up in the debate over U.S. immigration policy and border security. Some Democratic lawmakers have spoken of making the proposed $14.3 billion in American assistance to its Mideast ally contingent on concrete steps by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government to reduce civilian casualties in Gaza during the war with Hamas. The State Department said it had notified Congress of the sale late Friday after Secretary of State Antony Blinken determined, quote, an emergency exists that requires the immediate sale of the munitions in the U.S. national security interest. Huh? That means the purchase will bypass the congressional review requirement for foreign military sales. Such determinations are rare, but not unprecedented, when administrations see an urgent need for weapons to be delivered without waiting for lawmakers' approval. Folks, when they tell you that we got to have a hearing, a plebiscite, a commission, can we get a sponsor for a bill? Meanwhile, they can drop billions of dollars all over the damn place anytime they choose. And it's like, yeah, we actually don't need Congress for that, even though the Constitution of the United States clearly says that the power of the purse rests with the Congress and not with the executive or the president. The Constitution literally says the power of the purse rests with Congress. Spending the nation's money rests with Congress. Selling things rests with Congress. Now they're telling you, not really. Not really. Then when you show up, hey, you know what? Folks keep saying that our reparations keep getting held up by Congress. And Biden, you keep saying what you can't do because of Congress. Hey, can we go ahead and have a little bit of that bypass action that you just gave Israel? Can we get some of that? You know, right here on American soil? Because as black people, we consider ourselves to certainly be within the national security interests. We are certainly in the national security interests. The sale is worth $106 million and includes 13,981,120 millimeter high explosive anti-tank multi-purpose with tracer tank cartridges as well as U.S. support. Folks, will you please show me where are the tanks the Palestinians have? These are huge bullets that they're sending. These are anti-tank munitions. Oh, I missed it. Where are the tanks the Palestinians got? Where are the tanks they driving? Where's Hamas's tank fleet? Because I know where Israel's is, and I know who gave it to them. I'm just trying to figure out. By the way, where are all those tanks you're going to be shooting at the Palestinians with? Where are their tanks at? You've already killed 20,000 of them without this. Why do you need this? Bypassing Congress with emergency determinations for arms sales is an unusual step that has in the past met resistance from lawmakers who normally have a period of time to weigh on proposed weapons transfers and in some cases block them. In May 2019, then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made an emergency determination for an $8.1 billion sale of weapons to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Jordan after it became clear that the Trump administration would have trouble overcoming lawmakers' concerns about the Saudi UAE-led war in Yemen. Well, they've certainly gotten over that little problem there, didn't they? Congress, who the hell needs a Congress? And by the way, no, that is not lost on me. By the way, if Trump can get around Congress to the tune of $8.1 billion and Biden can get around them to the tune of $106 million, oh, you got plenty of room to cut the check for us. Oh, you don't have a little bit. You got plenty room now to cut the check for us. Plenty. So far as I can see, there's a loophole big enough to push the bag for all our reparations through based on what I just saw. There's plenty there. Then maybe we'll get to a point where we can be like Goldman Sachs and we can pass the bag for ourselves. Then again, maybe the whole idea is to make sure that we never get to that point. Maybe that's the real idea. Making sure we never get there. So far as I can tell, we are in America's national security interests. So far as I can see, we are, and we are the most neglected part of it here. So the sooner you get back to that, the better things will be, so far as I can tell. I know I could talk about the Israeli lawmakers who been talking against us and this, that, and the other. We've already covered that before. But I just want to take a moment to remind you all that folks are pretending to have an issue with us and the way we do things, and yet when we turn around, all of a sudden, it's not a problem anymore. When we turn around, all of a sudden, it's not a problem anymore. All of a sudden. And every excuse you have for not doing anything over here, all of a sudden you got all the ability in the world for everybody else. So what we're saying is we don't really have time to help everybody else when everybody else seems to line up and form ranks against us. Otherwise, we would be getting the results that you get. We would be getting those results. We're not getting them. Which means that you've decided that you join ranks with somebody else. Yeah, if y'all were really about that life, we'd be getting the same results you're getting. And until we start seeing those results, yeah, we're gonna play the backfield on our own. We're gonna play the backfield on our own. We are still having issues with Blog Talk tonight, so we are not, I've decided it goes on, but it's still acting a little bit janky. So I'm going to go ahead and forego taking phone calls here tonight. But I do want to thank Chadwick and everybody else here who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat, Venmo, Zachariah Minadar, Eric Gray, everybody else here. If you are new here to the Black Channel, welcome to the Haven of Intelligent Black Thought. We do this every weekend. Click that red subscribe button, click that yellow notification bell. Join us each and every time that we are here. If you have not been to our website, blackchannelfilms.com, you want to go and check out our groundbreaking best-selling documentary work, 7 a.m., Gentrified, Race War, all available on DVD and streaming. Go to blackchannelfilms.com. That is blackchannelfilms.com. I want to thank all of you for tuning in to tonight's program. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, my brothers and my sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future.